Right. Kyle, as I take missteps through this canyon, because I've done this 1,000 times, but I kind of just let it flow through. So if I take missteps from an order of operations perspective, you just put the brakes on, or I'll ask you. Okay.
Sure thing.
So first step here is roll call. We have Dave Thompson, Michael Costello, and Krista Swincer, and Judd McIntosh in attendance. And then we have to take an acceptance of that, right? Is that, or just, are we good to go there? Okay, so second one, acceptance of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
So moved. Can I get a vote? And we have to go around and.
I guess we should get a second.
A second. Oh, we need a second. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
And now you want to do the roll call one by one?
Yep.
Yep.
For the approval of the agenda, Dave Thompson.
Right here.
Judd McIntosh.
Yes.
Michael Costello.
Yes.
And Krista Schwenser.
Yes.
That's 4-4.
Thank you, Jessica. All right. Now on to the approval of the minutes from the February 17, 2021 meeting. I was not there. Is that an issue since we won't have a quorum voting on it?
Yeah, I'd say that we should just table the approval of the February minutes then until next meeting.
Okay.
If everyone's okay with that.
Do we need to make a motion with that? Or are we good to go? Just tabling it.
We can do a motion just to be safe. I'm not 100% on that one.
All right. Can we get a table to motion the minutes from the February 17th meeting until the next meeting?
I move that
we table the minutes until the next meeting.
I'll second it.
Perfect. Jessica?
To table the minutes until the next planning board meeting, Dave Thompson.
Affirmative.
Judd McIntosh.
Yes.
Michael Costello.
Yes.
Krista Schwenser.
Yes.
That's 4-4.
All right, perfect. Now on to old business. Nothing on old business. On to new business. 5A is the amended subdivision by the Forest Orono Associates, LLP for the Forest Hollow subdivision located on Grant Road in the low density residential district to recreate lot 20 from the originally approved subdivision, which had previously been combined with other lots on the east side of Grant Road. So typically now we would have the applicant give an overview. Kyle, is that correct? Or would you give your overview first?
I think generally I give the report first and then the applicant overview, but I think it's fine either way. But
yep.
We can
we'll go with standards. Go ahead.
So this is a similar project to one that we've seen a couple times in recent months now. The applicant had an approved subdivision in 2006. In 2018, there were a number of lots on each side of Grant Road combined, as there wasn't really a market to sell at that time. So they were combined for tax purposes. As the applicant mentioned last month, when one of these amended lots came forward, things are starting to pick up in the market now, and he's finding some buyers. So the applicant is looking to recreate the original lot 20 at the end of Grant Road by the cul-de-sac. The lot would be recreated in the same way that it was approved in 2006. It still meets all of the minimum requirements for the low density residential district. The applicant had an updated soil test done, which still met all of the standards and found no issues. So it's a pretty simple review, but it's just a procedural thing at this point to recreate the subdivision lot. It needs to come back to the planning board for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions though, if anyone has any.
I did have a question before we roll to Mr. Benson here.
Sure.
So in looking at the map, it does look like, so lots 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18 will remain merged as a single lot, and 20
Correct.
is being broken off. Okay. And it, so in your memo, it kind of sounded, in what you just said, it sounded like this has kind of been a semi-common practice where people have merged these subdivisions together into a single lot to reduce the tax burden and then break them back out. Is that?
Well, I'd say it's the practice. It's been a practice within this project. I think just because of the unique, I guess, conditions and circumstances that developed. But yeah, it's not necessarily something that we see in a lot of subdivisions around town. But procedurally, I sort of, I've looked, different ways, and there's really no other way, I think, to go about it than by considering it an amended subdivision each time, and having, that lot looked at each time it's recreated. If at some point the town were to change or amend its land use standards or subdivision standards, and they adjusted the minimum lot size or something to do with frontage or something like that, and then one of these lots came forward to be readjusted, then that could present some issues. But really, as long as the standards in the ordinance stay the same, then there's not really going to be much of a review each time.
Right. So there's no issue with this kind of practice, and it still conforms.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Right. The applicant, Mr. Benson, Don Benson, I see you're with us. Would you like to?
I'm here, but you can't hear me. I can see and hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Yep.
Oh, I'm here.
Yep. Go ahead.
Well, what has been said today is correct. The tax between 2006 and 2018, I sold 3 lots, and one of them I had to take back. So in 2018, when I unsubdivided it, I basically did it for tax purposes because the taxes were almost $20,000 a year. And then 2 years ago, last year in 2020, I had sold 2 lots 2 years ago. So last year I brought 2 more back, lot 7 and lot 13. And they're still for sale. But the today's work, lot 20, I have a customer, and last month's work on lot 6, I had a customer that specifically asked for those lots. So after I sell those, I'll have 3 lots available, 7, 13, and lot 4. Actually 4 lots, and lot 17 are available. So I'll try to sell those first. But if a customer comes along, I'll try to sell him anything he wants. So I apologize for, coming back every month, but I'm happy to do business. I've been in this deal for 15 years. So.
Understood. Thank you. So at this point, I would typically open up the public hearing portion of it. I guess I should do it formally, even though there's no public in attendance. So
Correct. Yeah, you can open it and then ask for public comment. And
okay, it's the public is hearings formally open. Feel free to ask your questions. And there's nobody there, so
Yep.
I guess we'll just keep it open.
Yeah, I mean, I think if any of the other board members have any comments, you know, you can leave the public hearing open during that and then close it afterwards.
So at this point, anyone have any questions for Mr. Benson?
I don't have any comments. We were here, just last month doing the same thing.
Yeah, there's no reason to do anything different than we did last month.
I have a question.
I'll still need DEP approval, which I have applied for.
Understood. Dave, did you say you had a question or you
I
had
have
no
a question. Yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You can.
There's a trail that's off the end of the cul-de-sac. I think it goes between 19 and 20. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't interfere with your lot or whatever.
No.
No, so part of the on the plan, the trail there's a 5-foot wide recreational path on a 20-foot easement, 10 feet on each lot 19 and 20. So that easement would remain the same as it was originally approved in the original subdivision.
Good. Okay, fine. I know it gets a lot of use at times.
All right. No other questions? All right. At this point, I'll close the public hearing. I think the next thing is reading in the finding of fact. Kyle, is that accurate? Is that the process?
Correct.
And so what we're doing now is I'll read through all of these and I'll look just for a nod or a hand after each item. And then at the end, do we take a vote? Is that
Correct.
our process? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the proposed findings of fact, Forest Hollow subdivision, amended subdivision review, March 17, 2021, pursuant to Article 7, Section 18-210, subdivision review of the Orono Code of Ordinances. The Orono Planning Board has considered the application of Donald Benson to amend the Forest Hollow subdivision, originally approved in July 2006 and amended in February 2018, June 2020, and February 2021 by recreating Lot 20 as it was depicted on the original 2006 original subdivision plan. The property is located in the low-density residential district on Grant Road and based on all evidence presented by the applicant, reviewing agencies, and town departments and the public, Planning Board found the following. Number 1, lots. The proposed amendment will recreate Lot 20 as it was approved by the Planning Board in the 2006 subdivision review from the retained land area on the east side of Grant Road. Further, that Lot 20 meets the minimum dimensional requirements of the low-density residential district. And further, that any future division of the retained land which constitutes the creation of subdivision lots will be subject to land use ordinance standards in effect at the time of the subdivision. Everyone good? Okay.
Good.
Number 2, drainage improvements. That the amended subdivision plan does not alter the previously designated and approved protected runoff drainage buffers that are part of the approved stormwater management plan. Everyone good?
Good.
Okay. Number 3, open space, wildlife habitat, wetlands, and recreational land. That the amended subdivision plan does not alter the previously designated and approved significant wildlife habitat buffer, vegetative buffers on lots 1 and 2, and the recreational path easement. Everyone good?
Good.
Okay. Number 4, overall finding as to the other elements of the Forest Hollow subdivision, that the recreating of Lot 20 from the original 2006 subdivision plan will not affect any previous findings leading to the original approval of the Forest Hollow subdivision and will not adversely affect any element of the original approval, including standards of for sewer and water utilities, pollution control, stormwater management, and drainage improvements, the roadway and traffic circulation, or financial and technical capacity. Further, that all other findings of the Planning Board with respect to this development at its meeting of July 19, 2016 are unchanged and remain in place. Everyone good?
Good.
Now we'll do a vote.
So yeah, we'd need a motion to approve the amended subdivision, and then as part of the motion to read in the conditions of approval at the end of the the planning board or the planner's report, and then the vote.
So wait, we don't need then a vote on the finding of fact. Everything we did there is good. We just now need to move to the end.
Correct.
Okay. So can I get a motion?
I can give it a try if you walk me through it or correct me if I need it.
Let's do it.
I move that we accept the applicant's request of an amendment to the approval of the 2006 major subdivision titled Forest Hollow to recreate Lot 20 from the original plan approval of Donald Benson Forest Orono Associates Limited Partnership of Grant Road, tax map 9-0, lot 14, with the following recommendations. Should the planning board decide to approve this subdivision amendment, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, that all findings of the planning board with respect to this development at its meeting of July 19, 2006, and all conditions of that approval and requirements pertaining thereto are unchanged and remain in place. Number 2, that the applicant be granted an approval site location of development law land use permit for the amended plan by the Maine Department of Environmental Protection and provide evidence of such approval to the town. And finally, number 3, that the signed amended subdivision plan to include conditions of approval that run with the property be recorded at the Registry of Deeds within 90 days of the approval of this amendment.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Perfect. Jessica?
For approval of the Forest Hollow amended subdivision, Dave Thompson.
Approve.
Judd McIntosh.
Approved.
Michael Costello.
Approved.
Krista Schwenzer.
Approved.
That's 4-4.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Benson.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Same to you.
Thank
night.
you.
All right. The next item under new business, 5B, is a draft land ordinance amendment to amend section 18-106, schedule of dimensional requirements by reducing the minimum lot size and minimum lot frontage requirement in the medium density residential district, as well as to create section 18-114, village residential overlay district, which would allow lots located in the medium density residential district within appropriate walking distance to the downtown area to utilize higher densities if certain standards are met. And Kyle, I guess the next step is for you to tell us what you think.
Sure. So, Judd, you would have missed it last month maybe, but I did a general kind of presentation on this topic last month, just because there's kind of a lot to go through and I wanted to give the board some background. But again, just as a quick overview, the comprehensive plan had 2 recommendations, the creation of this village residential overlay district. And the second recommendation was the reduction in minimum lot size in the medium density residential district, and also a reduction in the required lot frontage. And both of these recommendations were aimed at tackling a few similar goals, which is why they're kind of grouped together here, and in council discussions, we've kind of been talking about them together. It was really aimed at creating more affordable home ownership opportunities in the town's residential growth area. It was aimed at taking advantage of the town's existing infrastructure and amenities, specifically the downtown with the existing utilities, the existing services and public transit, things like that. And then it also provides some more flexible opportunities for home owners and property owners in this area. So I'll go through just briefly, each part of the ordinance amendment. So first, the Village Residential Overlay District. You should have had a map attached as part of the application. That's what it would look like on the townwide zoning map. So the yellow, is our normal medium density residential district. Any area with that kind of pink marking over the yellow would be where the Village Residential Overlay District was an option. So it would apply to only those lots in the medium density residential district. And it would specifically apply to lots with single or two family homes. So it's a completely optional tool, just like some of our other overlay districts, whether it's the Main Street office overlay or the Stillwater Avenue overlay. So if someone in this area wishes to leave their lot existing exactly how it is, that's fine. And they just continue to abide by the existing medium density residential standards. If a developer comes to an undeveloped parcel in this area, they can choose to develop it just under the normal medium density residential standards or our cluster development standards. No one has to utilize the option of the Village Residential Overlay. But if someone does, the benefit that they're really getting is the higher level of density. So, you can see in the dimensional table on page 2 that, our normal minimum lot size in this area is 20,000 square feet, and the normal frontage requirement is 100 feet. The minimum lot area, though, in the Village Residential Overlay would be 7,500 square feet with a 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit minimum lot size requirement. So that means if you wanted to have a 2-family home, you would only need 10,000 square feet versus in the MDR currently, you would need 40,000 square feet. So the whole goal of this is to really encourage smaller lots that still fit in with the character of our existing neighborhoods in town, but just provide some lower land prices and perhaps opportunities for some smaller houses on less land to promote more affordability. As you move on, though, there are some additional standards that come into play if you want to take advantage of those. And the big thing that was discussed through the comprehensive plan when coming up with this idea was, well, how do you make sure that these density bonuses are being taken advantage of for the purpose that you want it to, which is to encourage more home ownership and owner occupancy, and not have it used for the creation of more student rentals in existing neighborhoods, as that was another separate issue identified at the time of the comp plan. So that's where it comes into play that to take advantage of the overlay, you need to have a deed restriction that requires that the property be owner occupied. Or if you had a 2-family home, it would require at least one of the units to be owner occupied. So if you have a 20,000 square foot lot currently in the MDR, and your house is all the way to one side, and you want to divide your lot to create two 10,000 square foot lots under the MDR normally, those would be considered non-conforming and you wouldn't be able to do that. But using this, if you wanted to say, I'll put a deed restriction on my property that says it'll be owner occupied, and you put a deed restriction on the new lot that you're creating that also says that lot will be owner occupied by whoever ends up buying it, then you would be able to create those two 10,000 square foot lots. So it allows for some infill development that will hopefully kind of keep with the character of the neighborhoods. And then, so moving on to kind of the final sections there on page 3 of the amendment, that's when it starts getting into some of the design aspect, specifically when you have perhaps a larger subdivision taking advantage of these standards. And those design standards are really aimed at creating kind of using traditional neighborhood development techniques where, you know, you're promoting the intersection of streets and, you know, certain design features that kind of promote, you know, the kind of classic neighborhood feel that people associate with kind of pre-suburbanization development, that, you know, comfortable walk down a smaller street type of thing, and allows for things like alleyways that lead to larger parking areas that are kind of out of the way. It, you know, kind of requires a certain amount of open space similar to our existing cluster development standards, and things like that. So I think that's the general idea of it. I don't want to get too far into the weeds because you've all had a chance to read it, and it can be complicated just to listen to it and not actually visualize everything. So I think at that point, I'd want to open it up to any questions that you all have about that piece of the ordinance language.
I have a question.
Sure.
6C2. On page 3, in the middle of the page.
Yes.
Each street right of way shall include a sidewalk, etc.
Correct.
It calls for trees, and the tree board now does not plant trees. It does not recommend planting trees if the power lines are overhead.
Okay.
So I don't know, you might want to put a provision in there that if the sidewalk and the strip is underneath power lines, you plant small trees, crab apples, stuff like that, that don't get to be 40, 50 feet tall, and then you have to spend $1,000 to cut them down. But if it's on the other side of the street, then it's fine.
Okay. So I think that language was taken to match the existing language we have for a similar standard in our cluster development section of our ordinance. But yeah, that's certainly something that, you know, would be easy enough to implement in there to give, you know, the planning board an option if a project like that came forward and needed to meet that requirement. Or just give the board more flexibility as to what they were requiring.
So when I look at the map, to me, like the vast majority of this village overlay is already developed, except for one large section, which is really, I think the street name is Westwood, but it's that.
Right. It's yeah, there's two kind of large properties in between Westwood, Spencer, Mainwood area.
Right. That whole chunk of land back in there.
Right.
Everything else has got houses all over it, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I get, you know, I'm in agreement philosophically with this. I was part of that comprehensive planning process, and I think this makes sense. And I think there should be more housing walking distance to in town. And I'm not necessarily against it. I was just kind of pointing out that I think it's something like 30 acres back in there. And with these new rules, someone could put like 100 houses or something, 150 houses back in there. So just so we're aware that if someone, you know, bought that up, they could put a pretty decent size. Of course, they have to come over all these hurdles. Like it's not just boom, it's going to happen. But in theory, if there's 25 acres of buildable land back there, and you can put on would it be six houses an acre roughly? it's around 5.5. So
Right.
let's
Yeah.
just say 5 times 20, that's 100 houses. So,
yep. So for I guess 2 points that you bring up. One, so our existing medium density residential, lot size requirement is 20,000 square feet. However, if someone was coming forward with a subdivision idea for one of those lots right now, they would most likely use our cluster development standards, which would allow for 4 lots or 4 dwelling units an acre in this area. So it's an increase from that, but it's not quite as big of an increase as it is from, 7,500 square feet to 20,000 square feet. It's more like an increase from 7,500 square feet from 10,000 square feet.
right, but with that ordinance too, you have to have a bunch of green space, right? So you've got to have X percentage of the lot clear, so you can't fully utilize all 20 acres.
Correct.
So
yep. No, that is, I think this one, yeah, it calls for certain design features and access to open space, but yeah, it's not quite the same as, this one, the real kind of hurdle and, that any developer of a project of that scale would have to overcome is the idea that each unit would have to be owner occupied versus, having the ability to sell them as rental properties. And would someone want to develop, 100 houses knowing that they all had to be sold, forever basically to an owner occupant? So
agreed.
Yeah, that would be the consideration. And then to your other point about those being the main larger properties, yeah, for new subdivisions, those, and I think there might be a couple decent sized lots on Forest Ave as well in there. But yeah, there wouldn't be too many large undeveloped areas. It would be a few kind of key larger properties that would be open to this. But the other side of this is more so not necessarily creating an entirely new lot for a new single family home, but the idea that existing single family homes could much more easily convert to 2-family homes. So anyone in this area on a lot with a single family home, if your lot is at least 10,000 square feet, then, and you already live there, so it's already owner occupied, you could just make that, kind of owner occupancy deed restriction and then convert your single family home to a 2-family home. And that second unit could then be used as a rental. So it's something that we get asked about frequently, is people looking to have a second unit. We have standards for accessory dwelling units, which allow for that on some level. But there's a lot of size restrictions and limitations with the accessory dwelling units. It's not quite a second unit. So this would allow a lot more flexibility there for existing property owners to supplement their income, as well as providing kind of new housing opportunities in the surrounding downtown area. So the idea of the overlay is kind of twofold. It's, to allow some, new traditionally, neighborhood design type subdivisions to go into place, but also allow for some infill development in existing neighborhoods that are already developed.
So that was a good segue to my last question, which was the deed restrictions. How is that? I think for the single family homes, I have less of a concern about it. But for the homes they want to turn into a duplex and now change the deed restriction, how's that enforced? Who is the deed police, so to speak?
So it would be similar to the way we handle accessory dwelling units now. We require a similar agreement to be made. If someone, comes forward and wants to have an accessory dwelling unit, this primary single family home on the lot has to be owner occupied. And it, there needs to be an agreement, and that agreement needs to be recorded. So just through the permitting process, that's done. And then, there would be a verification that kind of deed amendment was recorded at the registry. And once the town, saw that verification, then I think the permit would be issued.
No, right. I understand the front end, we're good. I
Okay.
meant, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, is the rental registration program going to confirm that the people putting in the registration and match it against the deed to make sure that, oh yes, this person does own this?
I see.
Yeah, it's day one, we're always good.
Yep. Yeah, I think it would, I think the best way would be to anyone that comes forward and takes advantage of the overlay, we'd most likely, keep a record of that. And just like we do with student rentals or other things, we can create a layer on our GIS mapping to kind of easily track that. So when people, want to come forward or they ask about a property, we have a kind of easy to follow record of all of those. So just like we would check a property to see if it's in the shoreland zone, if someone, wants to do something, we could check to see if that deed restriction had been made on that property. And if that's something that, would have to be considered before, if they want to rent out the property, we could say, well, no, there's this restriction here, and you would not be able to do that. I imagine that would be the process.
I'm good.
Okay.
Michael, Krista, do either of you have any questions, concerns?
I have no questions.
Okay. So then the second piece to this amendment was a much shorter and easier to digest item, I think. It's just amending those couple dimensional requirements for lots in the medium density residential district in general that have access to town water and sewer. So this doesn't apply to, most of the MDR district has access to public utilities, but there are some on the outskirts of the MDR that might have a well or septic. But so this would reduce the minimum lot size in the MDR on those lots from 20,000 square feet to 15,000 square feet. And it would reduce the minimum lot size width requirement, frontage requirement from 100 feet to 80 feet. So this is a smaller change, but it also applies to every lot automatically. So it doesn't allow for quite as drastic a change as the village residential overlay, but it is something, again, if you had a lot in the MDR district right now that was between 30,000 square feet and 39,999 square feet, you could convert your home into a 2-family home now, whereas before you wouldn't have been able to. It also, if someone wants to break off a piece of land, it just means you can break off that, slightly smaller piece of land. So it's a direct recommendation by the comprehensive plan. Council during the committee level had some conversations about, whether or not, a lower number could be recommended, but as it was specifically recommended in the comprehensive plan, we're sort of, we generally kind of stick with the recommendation there, as any, ordinance amendment kind of has to be consistent with the recommendations of the comp plan. So, the 20,000 square feet number originally came from, state law when looking at things like lot size requirements for lots with septic. And, as, during the comp plan, there was a lot of data collection on the existing lots in neighborhoods in the MDR that came forward that showed that the average lot size in the district was much closer to that 15,000 square feet number. And that lots at that size wouldn't necessarily jeopardize the neighborhoods in any sort of way and would provide some benefit for existing property owners and potentially new homeowners. And
anyone have an opinion or question on that? My 2 cents on the second one is it seems like a no-brainer, and it's not that, you know, I think it makes sense.
Right.
And it's, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one. All right, so what do you want us to do go from here, Kyle? Are you looking for, good?
Yeah, so with an ordinance amendment, we would just be looking for a recommendation from the planning board that the board recommends the ordinance amendment move forward to the town council for a public hearing and adoption, and with whatever proposed changes so that the board has. So Dave's comment about the small language change with that one section, things like that. Yeah, so that would be it. And then I think we can take a motion and a second and a vote just on the recommendation, but it's not an actual adoption.
What does everyone think? Do we want to take a vote on it?
I'm okay with voting on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we should take a vote on it. We should make a motion and then take a vote on it.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think I concur with that. I have some concerns with the 7,500, but I think from a theoretical perspective, it makes sense. And I always like to go with the theoretical and not the real. So, yeah. So does someone want to make a motion?
Okay. Okay, I move that we support the proposed amendment to the Orono Land Use Ordinance to amend the zoning standards in the MDR and downtown area. And with the recommendation that, what page is that, Dave, with the
it was
with
6.
the trees? Pardon?
It was 6C2.
6C2.
Yeah,
Okay,
page 3.
Page 3, okay. That an item, is it C2?
6. So 6 performance standards, item C under 6, and then
Okay.
item 2 under C.
All right, thank you. We're going to put that in there. That any trees planted under power lines be trees that do not grow more than, what, 15 feet high or something, 20, what's a reasonable number? Things like crab apples that are limited in height and won't grow into the power lines.
All right, was that good enough, Kyle, that description?
I think that works.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Jessica, you're on.
Just to clarify, so this is for a recommendation, not for an approval? Okay, just make sure I get the language right. So for to recommend forward the ordinance for the village commercial overlay, Dave Thompson?
Jessica, this is for both the village overlay and the MDR.
That's right.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. I apologize. So for the to recommend forward the overlay for the village residential and the MDR. Dave?
Like he's working on the mute.
Judd?
Approved.
Michael Costello?
Approved.
Krista Spencer?
Approved.
Is that an approve from you, Dave? Give me a thumbs up.
There he is.
Approve.
Thank you. That's 4-4.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 5C under new business, a draft land ordinance, and this is a good one. A draft land ordinance amendment to create section 18-153, the solar energy systems, and amend section 18-106, schedule of uses, and amend 18-31 definitions to define, zone, and create performance standards for solar energy systems in the town of Orono. So Kyle, you are on.
Sure. So this came about. Currently, the town does not have any language in the land use ordinance from a definition perspective or a land use perspective or standards dealing with solar panels or large scale solar facilities. And so in this past summer, the town council adopted a moratorium on large scale kind of commercial solar projects so that we could have some time to put together some ordinance language revolving around those. As like I said, in the land use ordinance currently, we have no language for solar energy systems at all. We wanted to include in this ordinance, sort of every level of system from small scale, residential type projects that your individual homeowner or business owner might do, to the large scale multi-acre projects that would be more commercial projects and development. So there's currently not a moratorium on the small scale projects done by your individual, but that is covered here. And the idea was to not limit those types of projects at all. So as you can see, in the proposed use table on page 2, your roof mounted systems and small scale ground mounted systems would all just require a building permit. And the idea is that the town wants to promote this sort of thing and allow this sort of thing in general, and that these smaller scale systems and roof mounted systems don't really create that much of a impact or concerns on the ground that would require planning board level review. But then as you move into the kind of medium scale ground mounted systems and large scale systems, those would be required to come to the planning board for site plan review. And we start to get into the idea of zoning those more in particular zoning districts. So for instance, as medium scale systems are defined as any system between 1,500 square feet and 2 acres, those would not be allowed in the village commercial, where the lot sizes are very small, and you want to keep land uses close together and walkable. You wouldn't necessarily want a large chunk of land in the downtown used for that when there are more open spaces elsewhere that could be used. And then as you get to the large scale ground mounted systems, we tried to keep the zoning more geared towards the rural areas as well as the more commercial oriented areas like the commercial 1 and economic development zones. That being said, when you're thinking about the roof mounted systems, size doesn't really, the way it's written currently, size doesn't really come into play. The planning board primarily looks at review criteria, the impacts on the ground to the site, to the surrounding area, things like traffic and stormwater and water quality and earthwork and erosion control, those sorts of things. So we thought while we were developing this, if something is going on the roof of an existing structure, then that wouldn't really be the sort of review that's the planning board and the site plan review process really strives to get at. So that would have its own sort of review process with the code officer and life safety inspector and that sort of process. So then after you get through defining the different classifications of what's considered small scale, medium scale, and large scale, it gets into the idea of some performance standards, dimensional requirements, things like height of the systems, setbacks, vegetation management, specifically for medium scale and large scale projects, visual impact on the surrounding area. So something, is similar to our off-street parking standards in the medium density residential district, where we try to promote off-street parking more to the side and the rear of the lot. It's encouraged that, any solar system that's an accessory use would also be located towards the side or the rear of the lot to provide less of a visual impact from the street. But that being said, sometimes, conditions aren't feasible in every case. All lots are kind of unique and different. So there's, language in there that would potentially allow for placement in the front yard, if, proper screening measures are taken. And then as you keep moving through, utility connections being, promoted or trying to encourage people to have the utility connections for those larger scale projects underground, having an emergency kind of service plan in place with the town, and then standards for removal and decommissioning. And this was something that was talked about during the council committee, specifically with the decommissioning, was the idea of, with our subdivision infrastructure improvements, an applicant is required to provide an improvement guarantee up front to make sure that any infrastructure elements of the project are taken care of. Similarly here, that would be the case. The applicant would provide for the cost of removal if their system were to ever be abandoned. But as these systems can potentially last for decades, we kind of wrote it in there that it would be, that cost of removal would be re-estimated every 5 years, so that the town was making sure that as we got further into the future, that the cost of removal wasn't going so far beyond the initial improvement guarantee that was given. So again, I don't want to repeat everything that you've already read through with this, but in general, this is aimed at supporting and allowing solar energy systems of kind of all sizes in the town, and certainly the smaller scale systems for the individual. But it was just kind of aimed at creating it as a specific land use, so we had a better method of reviewing these types of projects when they came forward. Happy New Year. answer any questions or hear any comments.
As a point of reference for comparison, the project in VZ at the VZ Animal Clinic, would you call that large scale, medium scale, or small? If you know what I'm talking about.
I don't know the details off the top of my head, so I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Michael, I would guess that that is just a hair over small.
Just a hair over small.
Yeah, because so a small is going to be 50 by 30, 50 feet by 30 feet, and that might be a hair over that if you measured it out. You're talking about the one on the hillside, kind of, right?
Yeah, it's on unusable property anyway. It's on a hillside.
Yep.
So I can say, as far as in-town examples go, most of the permits and applications that we've gotten so far would be considered small scale. Most of the kind of individual projects are a few hundred square feet, maybe. There's been one project in town that I think was around 3,000 square feet. And so, I mean, that one would have been classified as a medium scale. It was sort of to support a multiple dwelling units, not just a single family home. So that a project like that would have had to come to the planning board with, you know, this language that's proposed. However, it still would have been an allowable use. It just would have had to come to the board for review instead of getting a building permit.
I have a question and a concern.
Yep.
So my question is under 3A, so three-dimensional requirements, A height, item
Okay.
2. So I sound like Dave here, drilling in. And so essentially that the ground-mounted solar systems use shall not exceed 12 feet in height. So what we're saying there is they can't be higher than 12 feet. But then it sounds like if they have a 30-foot setback, they can be up to 22 feet in height. But doesn't everything have to have a 30-foot setback according to?
No, so where's this setback?
So that's for medium and large. So essentially you're saying for a small, I can have a higher.
Right, so the A2 is referring to systems that are accessory uses. And then if we go to, sorry, just trying to find the one. So yeah, that would primarily be your small scale systems. And the ones abiding by that additional setback language would be your medium and large scale systems.
So I don't see where that says that. So under 3A, I'm not seeing where you're saying this. Under 3A2, I'm not seeing where you're saying that this is only for small and rooftop, I guess.
So it refers to 3A2, ground-mounted solar energy systems that are accessory uses. So, and then if you go to,
I don't see accessory uses in my copy. Maybe, so that's there now. I see ground mounted. So we're not talking rooftop, ground mounted solar energy systems that are accessory uses. Yes. Right. So that implies then it's a small accessory.
Right. So then, yeah, if you go to 1A and B, you can see that roof-mounted systems and small-scale ground-mounted systems shall only be allowed as accessory uses. So it would apply to those. And medium-scale systems could be either. So it could apply to a medium-scale system, except that medium-scale systems shall not be allowed as principal uses in the MDR, HDR, or C2. So the idea there is that you know, for instance, in the commercial one, if you had a large commercial operation on a large lot, you could have a medium scale ground mounted system as an accessory use, but you would never have a you would never have a medium scale you would never have a medium scale principal use, for instance, in the MDR or something like that. I think the logic was the medium scale as accessory uses is more so the idea of like something like one of the student apartment housing complexes, or a townhome development where there's a cluster development basically in the MDR. If a new development came in and they wanted to have that kind of communal level system where it was for multiple units on that property, that would be able to capture that. That being said, all medium scale projects would have to come to the planning board. So they would all be subject to our normal buffering and screening standards that are already existing in the ordinance. So if a project like that did come forward, there'd be some room there for the board to provide some visual buffers and, in those setback areas, I think. But yeah, I'm certainly open to feedback on all of this. So I'm not necessarily saying that's perfect the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have an issue with it necessarily. I found I wasn't quite clear on how it worked. And now that you've explained it, I understand. Okay. Because my other concern, which you again segued perfectly into, was whether or not we should allow medium scale ground mounted systems in the HDR. So if I wanted to buy up 2 acres of housing and slap it, in downtown, or not downtown, I guess that's commercial, but wherever HDR is, that just didn't seem right. There's a big difference between a medium scale that is 2,000 square feet for 2 houses or a cluster of houses, and now a 2-acre 87,000 square foot installation that is powering the town of Orono. So I guess it was a concern. I don't really know if it matters, because I don't think it's probably even possible that someone could do that. I don't think there's probably the HDR land out there to do that in our town anyway, so it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of HDR to begin with. Yep. It's really just a couple of properties. Yep. But yeah, it's a big range, and that was something when we were developing this language, and I was looking at a lot of model ordinances and ordinances in other communities. The ranges were all over the place, and we tried to kind of nail it down to what we thought made the most sense with the breakdown. But yeah, there is certainly still some room in there for a bit of a difference within them.
Any other questions or input from anyone?
Okay. I guess I have 2 things. One was sort of following up, like where things came from, and that is in the process of gathering information. Did you consult some of the major installer of such things in the state, Revision Energy, to see what input they might have as to how we approach this?
Yeah, so we talked to, I didn't speak with them directly, but so we looked at a couple model ordinances that came from the state level, both here and other places. And those models were, I think, drafted on the recommendation of multiple people, like in the industry, and just in general, people kind of working on planning and solar outside of the field. So that's where certain specific standards came from with things like that. We did have some conversations with people in the field that I think really aimed at shaping how we broke down the classifications of the three types. And I know through the kind of committee level, we had some public comment, I think, from people who are kind of in the field or in a related field of kind of sustainable energy there, and kind of looking at it, making comment. So, I think we tried to kind of get a grasp at the, how feasible some of it is from a real life project aspect. But yeah, I mean, it certainly has been a lot of kind of bouncing around with different materials and trying to figure out what fits best for us here.
Okay. Okay, and my other questions concern something relatively minor, and that is on page 4. Under vegetation management.
Yes.
Okay, item 4, vegetation management. Item E, no prime agricultural soil or significant volume of topsoil shall be removed from the site of installation of the system. And my question is, or comment is, that significant volume of topsoil seems to me that somebody has to decide what that means. Is that a flower pot full?
Right, yeah, I understand.
What is it? So we need to, we could say as determined by the planning board, or, but somehow that there has to be a mechanism for deciding what that is. And maybe the planning board doesn't want to start guessing as to what is a significant volume of topsoil.
That's a good catch, Krista. I almost feel like that needs to be a value per acre or something, because we do not want to be, put in the position of being able
trying to decide.
Yeah, like approve or not approve these things based on topsoil removal. Yeah, that's a good catch.
Okay, and then let's see. Oh, okay, and then we have a similar ambiguity just below that, under visual impact. A, and the sentence is, if it is determined that the only feasible location is to place the system in front of the principal structure, then measures shall be taken to screen the system from the street. And again, it's vague as to what these measures might be, and again, who decides?
Yeah, so the deciding party would be either the code officer or the planning board, depending on which type of project it was. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, we have language elsewhere in the ordinance that talks about an applicant do something to the best practical extent. But yeah, we could certainly add in some clarifying, I think, criteria there that the reviewing authority could use to make that determination. I think in general, it'd be things like the topography and natural, existing natural conditions and things like that. So we could add in a few of those sorts of criteria, to give whether it's the board or the code officer, a better kind of idea as to what they're really considering, not just well, as an applicant, I think it's more feasible to do it there. So yeah, I understand.
And yeah, okay. And then, ordinarily for screening, we just talk about screening to not make it visible from the road or from the neighbors or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the screening can get more complicated because we don't want tall trees straight to the south of this solar array,
right,
which would kind of defeat the purpose of it. So that would have to be a consideration too.
Sure. Yeah, I could work on some additional language to talk about screening that, I don't know, striking a balance between providing that screening without, creating an additional impact that would cause the solar to not function properly, something like that.
Kyle, what are you expecting for us to accomplish out of this tonight? Are you looking for us to approve this or have the? Do we want to?
That's really up to the board. It's
with only 4 of us here. Do we want more involved?
Yeah, I mean, certainly with the comments, there've been some comments and to looking at some additional things, and with some board members not here. And could certainly continue the discussion next month.
If we're going to go that route, which makes good sense to me, I found myself sort of in the same situation as the question that Judd raised about things, what was what. And I had to go back and kind of disentangle it. And, I know it's laid out in what should be a relatively logical order. And yet on the first reading of this thing, I really got lost there at the sort of starting on page 2 with number 3 and going down through page 3. That somehow I lost track of what was what, and that's a very vague complaint. But if you could look at that, I knew just where Judd had sort of had difficulties, because I had difficulties there too.
Nope, that's important to consider. I mean, the readability of the ordinance makes things easier when people can actually understand it. So yeah, I mean, I could take a look at, not so much changing the intent, but changing the layout to see if there's a better way to do that.
I have no problem with the roof mounts because I can visualize that, and I've seen several of them. It might be helpful to be able to see what a visual would look like of something mounted in someone's yard. The placement and what we would like to see it from the street view. I'm sure there's projects out there or brochures that already have that in it.
Ron Davis has a ground-mounted one on Gardner Road. And he's got a huge area in front of his house. So it's not a typical lot, but there's a ground-mounted one there.
Yeah, I could put together some visuals as well, just of different types and different scales, I think, to give people a better idea.
Just thinking we don't want to go down the road of back when they had the big old disc that you could reach the moon and back with for your TV that were planted, and a lot of them are staying around now and haven't been taken down.
All right, is there any other feedback? It sounds like we want to table this and look at it again next meeting. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
So do we need to, we don't need to make a motion for that? We can just table it? Or do you want us to vote on it? I think we voted before when we tabled.
Okay. Yeah, I think there can be a vote to table.
Can I get a motion?
I move that we table the consideration of the Orono code for to implement standards for solar energy systems until the next planning board meeting.
I'll second that for you.
Jessica.
To table the solar ordinance until the next planning board meeting, Dave Thompson.
I agree.
Judd McIntosh.
Approved.
Michael Costello.
Approved.
Krista Schwenzer.
Approved.
That's 4-4.
Thank you. All right, that's the end of new business. Item 6, discussion. Do we want to chat about anything?
I think the only update I have is just, I think it looks like we're going to be having remote meetings at least until June. So just to keep in mind for the next few months at least. And then I think we'll, the town will be reevaluating as far as, what types of meetings after that going forward. So other than that, no other discussion for me.
Do we have anything for next month other than this?
I believe we will. There's some applications that have started coming in that aren't finalized, but I think there'll probably be something for next month.
Okay.
All right, anything else from anyone under discussion? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
No move.
Second.
All right. Do we have to vote for that, Jessica?
We do. One last time. For the adjournment of the March planning board meeting, Dave Thompson.
Yes.
Judd McIntosh.
Yes.
Michael Costello.
Yes.
Krista Schwenzer.
Yes.
That's 4-4. We are adjourning at 7:45.
All right. Thank you, guys. Let's hope that Phil's back next week. This was too stressful.
Oh, it went well.
You did fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. I need the moral support. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.